3 true Red Lobster horror stories, animated story 1. The Private Party. My name is Marcus, and I was 27 years old when this happened. I was working as a server at a Red Lobster in Jacksonville, Florida, and I had been assigned to work a private party in one of our back dining rooms on a Saturday evening. It was around 7:30 p.m. in early December, and the party was supposed to be a corporate holiday celebration for about 20 people. But when I walked into that private room to take the first drink orders, I realized something was wrong. There were only 4 people seated at a table meant for 20, and they were not dressed for a corporate event. They were dressed in dark clothes, speaking in low voices, and when they looked up at me, their eyes held something I cannot describe, something predatory. Before I continue, make sure you hit that subscribe button and leave a comment telling me where you are watching from tonight, because what happened in that private dining room changed the way I think about trust forever. The Red Lobster I worked at was located in a busy commercial area near the interstate. One of those locations that did steady business year-round thanks to a mix of locals and travelers passing through. We had 2 private dining rooms at the back of the restaurant, separated from the main floor by a hallway and a set of double doors. These rooms were popular for birthday parties, business dinners, and holiday celebrations. I had been working there for about 2 years, starting as a busboy and working my way up to server. The money was decent, especially during the holidays, when tips were generous. Private parties were usually the best shifts because you could focus on one group instead of juggling multiple tables. That Saturday, my manager told me I had been assigned to a private party booked for 7 p.m. Corporate event, 20 guests, pre-fix menu. Easy money. I set up the room with place settings for 20, made sure the drink station was stocked, and waited for the guests to arrive. At 7:15, the first guests walked in. 4 men, all of them, maybe late 30s to mid 40s. They were not wearing business attire. No suits, no company polo shirts, nothing that suggested a corporate event. They were wearing dark, casual clothes, and they moved through the hallway with a quiet confidence that immediately put me on edge. They sat at one end of the long table, leaving 16 empty seats between them. I approached and welcomed them, asked if the rest of their party would be arriving soon. One of them, the one who seemed to be in charge, smiled and said no. He said it would just be the 4 of them tonight. He said there had been a change of plans. I told him I would adjust the settings and asked if they wanted to move to a smaller table. He said no. He said they liked this room. He said they wanted privacy. Something about the way he said privacy made my skin crawl. But I was a server. My job was to serve, not to question customers. I removed the extra place settings and took their drink orders. Over the next hour, they ordered food, ate slowly, and talked in voices too low for me to hear. Every time I entered the room, they would stop talking and watch me. Not in a curious way, in an assessing way, like they were measuring me for something. Around 8:30, one of them asked me a question. He asked how long I had been working here. I told him 2 years. He asked if I knew everyone on the staff. I said yes, pretty much. He asked about the manager on duty, what time the restaurant closed, how many exits the building had. I laughed nervously and asked if he was planning to rob us. It was a joke. A bad joke, but a joke. He did not laugh. He just looked at me with that same assessing expression. Then he smiled and said he was just making conversation. I excused myself and went to find my manager. His name was David, and he had been running this location for almost 10 years. I told him about the party, about the questions they were asking, about the way they were behaving. He looked concerned, but said there was not much we could do. They were paying customers. They had not done anything wrong. He said he would keep an eye on things. I went back to the private room to check on them. The table was empty. All 4 of them were gone. But they had not left the restaurant. I would have seen them pass through the main dining room. They had gone somewhere else, somewhere in the back of the building. I walked down the hallway past the other private dining room toward the employee areas. The kitchen was to the left, the office and storage rooms to the right. The back exit was at the end of the hall. That is when I heard voices coming from the office. David's voice, and another voice I did not recognize, one of the men from the party. I moved closer, staying against the wall, trying to hear what they were saying. The man was making demands. He was telling David to open the safe. He was telling him to give them the weekend deposit. He was telling him that if he cooperated, no one had to get hurt. I heard David's voice tight with fear, saying he would do whatever they wanted. I heard the beep of the safe being opened. I heard the rustle of cash being moved. I should have run. I should have gone to the main floor and called 911, but I was frozen, pressed against that wall, listening to a robbery happening 10 feet away from me. Then, one of them came out of the office. He saw me immediately. Our eyes met. I recognized him as one of the men from the table, the one who had asked me about the exits. He did not say anything. He just reached into his jacket and pulled out a gun. I ran. I sprinted down the hallway toward the kitchen, toward people and noise and witnesses. I heard him behind me, his footsteps pounding on the tile floor. I burst through the kitchen doors, nearly colliding with a line cook, and kept running toward the main dining room. I started shouting. I told everyone to call the police. I told them there were men with guns in the back. I told them we were being robbed. The main dining room erupted in chaos. Customers screaming, employees, runny people diving under tables. Someone must have called 911 because within minutes I heard sirens approaching. The men did not come to the main floor. They fled through the back exit, the one they had asked me about earlier. By the time the police arrived, they were gone. David was shaken, but unharmed. They had taken almost $8,000 from the safe. They had been planning this for weeks, the police said. The fake reservation, the questions about staffing and exits. They had known exactly what they were doing. They caught 2 of them about a month later. They had pulled the same scheme at other restaurants in other cities. The other 2 were never found. I quit a few weeks after the robbery. I could not walk down that hallway without seeing the man with the gun. Could not enter the private dining room without remembering those 4 men sitting at a table meant for 20, watching me with predatory eyes. I work at an office now. No customers, no late nights, no private rooms where strangers can corner you in a hallway. It is safer, quieter, exactly what I need. But I think about that night constantly. The questions they asked, the way they assessed the building, the staff, the vulnerabilities. How easily they could have decided that leaving witnesses was too risky. If you work in a restaurant especially if you handle private events. Pay attention to who books your rooms. Pay attention to customers who ask too many questions about operations and security. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong, because sometimes the private party is not what it seems. Sometimes the people sitting at your table are not there for the food. They are there for something else entirely. Story 2. The Waitlist. My name is Terrell, and I was 33 years old when this happened. I was having dinner at a Red Lobster in suburban Memphis, Tennessee, with my wife and 2 daughters on a Friday evening in late August. The restaurant was packed, as it usually was on weekends, and we had put our name on the wait list for a booth. We were sitting in the lobby area, watching families come and go when I noticed a man watching us. Not glancing occasionally. Watching. Staring at my daughters with an intensity that made my blood run cold. When I made eye contact with him, he did not look away. He just smiled. And that smile told me everything I needed to know about what was going through his mind. If you are new here, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because what happened over the next 45 minutes is something every parent needs to hear. My daughters were 7 and 5 at the time, full of energy and excitement about going out to dinner. We didn't eat at restaurants often, so when we did, it was a special occasion. They were dressed in their favorite outfits, bouncing around the lobby, looking at the lobster tank, asking questions about everything. The lobby was crowded that night, maybe 15 or 20 people, waiting for tables, families and couples scattered across the benches and standing room. The wait time was about 45 minutes, which was not unusual for a Friday. We found a spot on one of the benches near the front windows. My wife was scrolling through her phone, and I was watching the girls explore the lobby, making sure they did not wander too far or bother other customers. That is when I noticed him. He was standing near the hostess stand, maybe 20 feet from where we were sitting. Mid-40s average height, wearing khaki pants and a blue polo shirt. He looked like any other suburban dad waiting for a table. Except he was not watching the hostess. He was not looking at his phone. He was looking at my daughters. I noticed because of the intensity of his focus. He was tracking their movements, watching them walk to the lobster tank, watching them spin around and run back toward us. His eyes never left them. I told myself I was being paranoid. People look at children all the time. My daughters were cute and energetic, the kind of kids who naturally drew attention. It did not mean anything, but I kept watching him, and he kept watching them. After about 10 minutes, he moved. He walked away from the hostess stand and positioned himself closer to the lobster tank, where my daughters were pressing their faces against the glass. He stood maybe 6 feet away from them, still watching. I stood up. My wife looked at me, confused, asking where I was going. I told her I was going to check on the girls. I walked to the lobster tank and put my hands on my daughter's shoulders. I told them to come sit with Mommy, that they should not be wandering around. They protested, wanted to keep looking at the lobsters, but I was firm. As I guided them back toward the bench, I looked at the man. He was looking at me now, and there was something in his expression. Annoyance, frustration, like I had interrupted something. He smiled at me. The same smile I had seen earlier. A knowing smile, a challenging smile. We sat back down on the bench. I kept the girls close, told them to stay with us until our table was ready. My wife asked what was wrong. I nodded toward the man and told her quietly that he had been staring at the girls. She looked over at him, then back at me. She said maybe I was overreacting. She said people looked at children all the time. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to dismiss my instincts as paranoid dad syndrome. But every time I looked at the man, he was looking back. At us. At my daughters. About 20 minutes later, the hostess called our name. We gathered the girls and followed her toward our table. As we walked through the main dining room, I glanced back toward the lobby. The man was following us. Not obviously. Not directly. But he was walking in the same direction, weaving through the tables, keeping us in sight. The hostess seated us at a booth near the back of the restaurant, close to the restrooms. A good table for families, she said. Easy access to everything. I did not feel good about it. I felt cornered. The back of the restaurant, away from the entrance, away from witnesses. The man took a seat at a table about 30 feet away. He was alone. He ordered a drink, but did not look at the menu. He just sat there positioned, where he could see our booth clearly. I told my wife I was going to talk to the manager. I found him near the kitchen and explained the situation. A man had been watching my daughters in the lobby. He had followed us to our table. He was still watching. I asked if they could do something. The manager looked concerned. He said he couldn't ask a paying customer to leave without cause, but he would have staff keep an eye on the situation. He said if the man approached us or did anything inappropriate, they would intervene immediately. I went back to my table. My wife had noticed the man's position and was looking worried now. The girls were oblivious, coloring on their kids' menus, excited about the food coming. We ordered. The food arrived. We ate. The whole time I kept watch on the man. He ate slowly, taking small bites, never finishing his meal. His eyes kept drifting to our table. About halfway through dinner, my oldest daughter said she needed to use the restroom. It was down a short hallway, near the back of the restaurant. My wife said she would take her. As they stood up and walked toward the restroom, the man reached for his check and flagged down his server. He was getting ready to leave, or he was getting ready to move. I stood up and told my wife I would take our daughter to the restroom instead. I picked up my younger daughter too, carried her on my hip. I was not leaving either of them at the table alone. We went to the restroom as a family. All 4 of us crammed into the small space, while our oldest used the toilet. When we came out, I looked toward the man's table. He was gone. I felt a moment of relief. Maybe he had just left. Maybe I had been wrong about everything. Then I saw him. He was standing in the hallway near the restrooms, leaning against the wall, waiting. He looked at us, at my daughters. He smiled. I put myself between him and my family. I told my wife to take the girls back to the table. I told her to go now. She grabbed both girls and walked quickly back toward the dining room. The man watched them go. Then he looked at me. He did not say anything. He did not have to. His eyes said everything. I told him to stay away from my family. I told him I'd already talked to the manager. I told him the police would be called if he came near us again. He laughed. A quiet, ugly laugh. He said I was being dramatic. He said he was just waiting for the restroom. He said he had not done anything wrong. Then he pushed past me and walked toward the back exit. He disappeared through the door into the parking lot. I went back to my table. My hands were shaking. My wife was pale, holding both girls close. We asked for the check and left as quickly as we could. In the parking lot, I scanned for him. I did not see him. I did not see what car he drove. We got into our vehicle, and I locked the doors immediately. I reported the incident to the police when we got home, gave them a description, told them what had happened. The officer said without any physical contact or explicit threat, there was not much they could do. He said I should trust my instincts. He said I had done the right thing by not leaving the girls alone. I think about that night constantly. The way he watched them, the way he followed us, the way he positioned himself near the restrooms waiting. He was hunting. I am certain of it. He was looking for an opportunity. A moment when one of my daughters was separated from us. A moment when I was not paying attention. He did not get that moment, because I was watching him as closely as he was watching us. If you are a parent, please pay attention when you are in public places with your children. Watch for people who are watching your kids. Notice if someone follows you through a restaurant. Never let your children go to restrooms alone, because predators look normal. They dress like suburban dads. They smile politely. They wait for opportunities. And the only thing that stops them is a parent who refuses to look away. Story 3. The Closing Manager. My name is Darnell, and I was 29 years old when this happened. I was the closing manager at a Red Lobster in suburban Dallas, Texas, responsible for shutting down the restaurant and securing the building every night. It was a Sunday evening in late October, around 10:45 p.m., and I was finishing the closing procedures with 2 other employees still in the building. We had locked the front doors 30 minutes earlier, and were wrapping up the final tasks before heading home. That is when I heard something from the back storage area. A sound that should not have been there. The sound of a door closing. A door that was supposed to be locked and alarmed. Subscribe and hit that notification bell, because what I found in that storage room is something that still haunts me today. The Red Lobster I managed was located in a strip mall off a major highway, surrounded by other restaurants and retail stores that all closed by 10 on Sundays. By the time we locked our doors at 10:15, we were usually the only lights still on in the area. The parking lot would be empty, except for employee vehicles, and the surrounding businesses would be dark and quiet. I had been the closing manager for about 3 years at that point. I knew the building inside and out, every door, every alarm, every quirk of the old construction. The closing routine was burned into my muscle memory. Lock the front doors, count the registers, secure the cash in the safe, check all the exits, set the alarm, leave. That Sunday had been slower than usual. October was always a quiet month, and Sundays were our slowest day anyway. By 10 p.m., we had maybe 5 tables still eating. By 10:15, they were gone, and we locked up. I was in the office counting the registers, while my 2 remaining employees, a cook named Jerome and a server named Alicia, finished cleaning the kitchen. The building was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigeration units and the distant sound of water running as Jerome cleaned the grill. At 10:45, I finished the count and sealed the deposit bag. I was about to put it in the safe when I heard it. A door closing, heavy, metallic. The distinctive sound of our back emergency exit, the one that led from the storage area to the alley behind the building. I froze. That door was supposed to be locked from the inside. It had an alarm that would trigger if opened from either direction. But I had not heard an alarm, just the door. I set down the deposit bag and walked out of the office. The kitchen was straight ahead, the storage area to the left, down a short hallway. I could hear Jerome and Alicia talking, their voices echoing off the stainless steel surfaces. I called out to them, asked if either of them had gone out the back door. Jerome said no. Alicia said no. They both looked at me confused. I told them to stay in the kitchen. I told them I was going to check the storage area. The hallway to storage was maybe 20 feet long, lined with shelving full of dry goods and supplies. At the end was a heavy metal door that led to the back alley. The door was equipped with a push bar and an alarm sensor that was supposed to trigger the moment the door opened. I walked down the hallway slowly, my footsteps loud in the silence. The storage shelves cast shadows in the dim light from the single overhead bulb. I reached the end of the hall and looked at the door. It was closed. The push bar was in place. Everything looked normal. But on the floor, near the base of the door, I saw something that made my heart stop. A footprint. A dirty footprint on the tile floor facing into the building. Someone had come in through this door. Recently, I looked around the storage area, suddenly aware of how many hiding spots there were among the shelving units. Stacks of boxes, pallets of supplies, dark corners where the light did not reach. I backed toward the hallway, keeping my eyes on the shadows. I needed to get Jerome and Alicia. I needed to call the police. I needed to get out of this building. I turned around. He was standing at the other end of the hallway. A man. Maybe mid-30s, wearing dark clothes and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. He was just standing there between me and the kitchen, blocking my path to the others. For a moment, neither of us moved. We just stared at each other across 20 feet of hallway. Then he started walking toward me. I backed up, hitting the shelving behind me. There was nowhere to go. The back door was behind me, but if I turned to open it, he would be on me before I could get through. He did not speak. He did not rush. He just walked slowly, deliberately, his eyes fixed on me. I grabbed the first thing I could reach from the shelf beside me. A can of tomato sauce, maybe 2 pounds. I threw it at him as hard as I could. It caught him in the shoulder, made him stumble. I ran. I sprinted down the hallway past him as he recovered towards the kitchen. I was screaming for Jerome and Alicia, telling them to get out, telling them someone was in the building. I burst through the kitchen doors and nearly collided with Jerome. He was holding a knife, one of the heavy chef's knives from the cutting station. He had heard me screaming. I pointed toward the storage hallway. I told him there was a man, that he had come in through the back door. Alicia was already on her phone, dialing 911. Jerome and I stood side by side, blocking the kitchen entrance, waiting for the man to come through. He never did. We waited maybe 3 minutes until we heard sirens. Then we heard the back door slam. He was leaving the same way he had come in. The police searched the building and the alley. They found signs that someone had tampered with the alarm on the back door, disabling it before entering. They found footprints in the alley leading from the street. But they did not find him. They asked me what he had looked like. I gave them the best description I could. Average height, dark clothes, baseball cap. Not much to go on. They said they would investigate. A week later, they caught him. He had broken into another restaurant about 15 miles away, but this time the silent alarm worked. Police caught him in the back office trying to get into the safe. His name was Gerald Parsons. He had a long history of commercial burglaries targeting restaurants and retail stores that did large cash business. He would scout locations, learn the closing procedures, figure out which doors had weak security. Then, he would disable the alarms and wait inside until the building was almost empty. What he did to the employees he encountered varied depending on the situation. The detective who told me about the arrest wouldn't give me details, but his expression said enough. There were other charges beyond burglary. Worse charges. I think about that hallway constantly. The moment I turned around and saw him standing there, the slow, deliberate way he walked toward me, the look in his eyes that told me he had done this before and knew exactly what he was doing. If Jerome had not been in the kitchen with that knife, if Alicia had not been there to call for help, if I had been closing alone that night the way I sometimes did when we were short-staffed, I do not close restaurants anymore. I transferred to a day shift position, took a pay cut, restructured my whole life around the determination to never be alone in a building at night again. Because I learned something that night. I learned that locked doors and alarm systems are not guarantees. I learned that someone who really wants to get in will find a way. I learned that the only real protection is other people, witnesses, helpers, someone who can call for backup when the predator emerges from the shadows. If you work closing shifts at restaurants, please be careful. Check your doors. Check your alarms. Make sure you're never alone in the building, especially in those final minutes when the lights are dim and everyone else has gone home. Because the person waiting in your storage room is counting on you to be alone. They are counting on your routines and your assumptions. They are counting on the moment when there is no one left to help. Do not give them that moment. Those were 3 true Red Lobster horror stories. Restaurants are places we associate with celebration, with family dinners, with the ordinary pleasures of daily life. We go there to relax, to enjoy good food, to mark special occasions. We feel safe because we are surrounded by other people in a familiar public space. But as these stories show, that sense of safety can be an illusion. The private dining room where armed men plan a robbery. The lobby where a predator watches children and waits for opportunities. The storage room where an intruder hides until the building empties out. Danger does not respect public spaces. It does not care about crowds or cameras or the comforting presence of other customers. It waits for the moments when attention lapses, when children wander, when employees are alone and vulnerable. Pay attention to who is around you. Notice when something feels wrong. Trust your instincts. Protect your children. Watch out for your co-workers. And remember that the most important thing you bring to any situation is your awareness. Your willingness to notice what others might miss. Your refusal to explain away the warning signs. That awareness might be the difference between a normal night out and a story that haunts you forever.